This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. So much of your personal info is out of your control, like your insurance provider that has your social security number and your favorite retailer that has your payment details. If they get breached, your information, your identity, is vulnerable. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means. It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Black Friday week starting November 21st.
It's the Larry Kudlow Show. Free market prosperity starts here. Now, here's Larry Kudlow.
So we still have, despite this huge stock market rally, which really actually started during the election day, and then was up 1,500 points the day after Election Day, and continued to rise after that, almost up 2,000 points. Wall Street still thinks that President Donald Trump's going to cause inflation, right? Lower taxes, deregulation, drill baby drill, that's somehow going to be inflationary. Let's talk to our great friend John Carney, Breitbart news editor for economics and finance and co-author of the must-read daily Breitbart Business Digest. So, John, I love this. The market's soaring, but the beat goes on Wall Street. It's inflationary. It's inflation. If it's so bad, how come it's so good?
Larry, it's a good question. I actually think that while people are still saying it's going to be inflationary, that some of the signals we're getting from the market are telling us a very different story. I think the Fed hasn't yet come to grips with the idea that you can have non-inflationary growth. I mean, we used to joke about how Jay Powell seems to hate low unemployment and grits his teeth at people getting jobs. I think we have a very good setup right now for a low inflation, high growth scenario. We've had it in the past. We had it actually in Donald Trump's first term, and I think we're going to achieve it again.
What's the biggest? Is it the tariffs? By the way, we don't know what his tariff policy is going to be. We know he wants to stop unfair trading practices. We know he's willing to use tariffs as a negotiating tool to beat back unfair trading practices and defend American business. But we don't actually know what his tariff policy is going to be. And I just want to add, I said this in the earlier segment, in Mr. Trump's first term, he slapped on about $350 billion worth of tariffs on China. But there was no inflation. I mean, the CPI increased 7% over 4 years, like 1.5% per year. It was nothing. So why is it going to be inflationary this time around?
Well, you're absolutely right. It wasn't inflationary last time around. We shouldn't expect it to be inflationary this time around. Even in some of the people who have done sort of worst case scenarios where, a 10% tariff is applied to everyone, everywhere, all over the world, it's not actually that inflationary. I think the American Action Forum has it up just adding 0.4% to the rate of inflation. And that, frankly, you're hinting at, we're very unlikely to actually get a tariff that applies to everyone because Donald Trump has said that this is an invitation to negotiate. A lot of countries around the world, I really think actually, for instance, Mexico, which is one of our biggest trading partners, will be able to sit down with Donald Trump and say, yes, we promise we are going to readopt Remain in Mexico. We are going to help you achieve border security. And in exchange, please don't put the 20% tariff on us. And by the way, we'll also make sure that China isn't using us as a backdoor into the United States. And that's the sort of thing Donald Trump wants to use trade policy for. And Wall Street, frankly, knows that. I mean, if you read some of the notes from people like Bank of America, they think, yes, we are going to get higher tariffs on China, but they don't think we're really going to get a 10 or 20% tariff on everywhere else around the world.
Well, I think you made the point on the TV show or radio, but it is precisely because he's a good negotiator that you won't actually get the kinds of tariffs that he threatens during negotiations. That's the irony of the story. And I was just thinking, in the last couple of days before the election, Trump said to Mexico, you're either going to help us put back Remain in Mexico, help us put troops on the border like you did in the first term, or I'm going to tariff you 25%. So that doesn't mean you're going to have a 25% tariff. That means probably Mexico will come to heel and will help with the Remain in Mexico to keep the border closed. That's just a perfect example of why negotiation doesn't necessarily lead to the high tariffs.
That's right. And of course, Mexico is going to be willing to do that. They did it last time. The only reason it's not there now, frankly, is not out of defiance against the U.S. It's because Biden told them we don't want it anymore. They will bring it back. And even if we did have very high tariffs, let's say, somehow the 20% tariff everywhere goes, that actually also will not cause a lot of inflation. One, because it's a very small amount of goods. Remember, it's only imported goods. Two, and Donald Trump has said this as well, it will actually encourage a lot of reshoring. So rather than products going up by 20%, people will say, we can bring production into the United States and avoid the tariff that way. So I don't think that there is going to be very much inflation at all from the tariffs. And by the way, it's even a misnomer to describe the one-time increase in prices that could possibly theoretically follow from the imposition of a tariff as inflation. Because inflation, as we just learned, is an ongoing process in which the prices keep rising. When we had our inflationary crisis under Biden, it wasn't because prices moved up once. It was because they kept going up at a fast rate month after month after month after month.
Yeah, I mean, basically, inflation is caused by excessive fiscal and monetary. I mean, too much money chasing too few goods. So if you're pouring on government spending and the Federal Reserve is buying all those bonds and monetizing it and injecting money into the system, that's inflationary. By the way, what did you think of the Jay Powell? What did you think of the Jay Powell presentation? I'll call it on Thursday. And by the way, can I just say this question about I won't resign if he asked me to? Trump hasn't asked him to resign. Trump sends him no such thing. This is one of these weird left-wing media things. Trump said specifically, look, I would weigh in. The guy's allowed to have his opinion, but he's not going to dictate or mandate. He's never said he's going to fire him. I mean, I never understood that.
Yeah, look, it's actually a kind of media-driven panic. It's meant to make either the markets or the public fear, Donald Trump as a chaotic leader. Donald Trump isn't going to try to remove him. He has no interest in trying to remove him. The guy's term is up in a year and a half, and that's when he'll be replaced, unless he decides to step down. Look, I think there are good arguments for why some of these guys should step down. Certainly, Michael Barr should step down. He is the head of supervision at the Fed. He should go because, frankly, the policies he would put in place are directly contrary to what Donald Trump wants to do. And there's a good argument Powell should step down. But if he decides to stick around for a year and a half, that's fine. We'll survive that. And I don't see any reason why, Trump would, try to upset precedent and remove him. Although I will differ from even the people at the White House Counsel. I do suspect the president ultimately has the right to remove him and that the U.S. Treasury actually could force him out. Steve Forbes said that last night that, ultimately if the president decides that the head of the Fed should go, he should definitely go.
Well, he might think hard about it. I don't know. We went through a little bit of that in the first term. You made a point, though, earlier on the TV show, capital requirements, higher capital standards. Why is that necessary? My impression is, bank stocks are roaring. My impression is banks are overcapitalized as it is.
Oh, yeah. So, no, my point is actually not that we're going to have higher capital requirements, but that we can actually start to use the capital requirements that are in place to shift the focus of bank lending. Look, the Biden administration really was putting pressure on banks to not lend into fossil fuel production, not lend into pipelines, and they wanted to go even further. In a second term, we would have seen a lot of use of bank capital requirements. By raising the risk weightings of projects, you can force banks to not do certain things. I think Donald Trump is going to be able to do the opposite, which is to say we will lower capital requirements for funding things that we know are good for the economy, good for the banks doing the loans, good for investors making it, such as pipelines, energy extraction, building high-tech manufacturing facilities. We can encourage all of this through bank regulation. The left does it when they want Green New Deal projects. We can do it for pro-growth, pro-American projects.
Right. So, yeah, it's a good point. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. John Carney, everybody. Breitbart news editor for economics and finance and co-author of the Breitbart Business Digest. Must read every day. Tremendous stuff. Thanks, John. Quick break, and then my pal Kevin Hassett, former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. Kevin's going to tell us how we can get 3 to 4% growth and get back on track for the next 10, 20, 30 years. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back.
This is the Larry Kudlow Show.
Eden Memorial Chapels understands Jewish funerals can take many forms. Some are Orthodox, while others are more conservative or of a Reformed nature. There's no one better. With services close to all New York and New Jersey cemeteries, Eden Memorial Chapels offer fair and balanced pricing and can provide easy transfer of you and your loved ones to Israel. While you're grieving, they're here to take care of all the details so that you deal with less bureaucracy and have more peace of mind. Go to EdenMemorial.com. That's EdenMemorial.com.